Alrighty, sorry about the delay there, folks. Welcome back to another installment of Free Read Fridays. I'm Fraggeth, your intrepid narrator. As ever, nothing has changed. I have not undergone an identity crisis, and I'm not original enough to come up with another name. So, here we are. So, previously on Hellburner, the shoe is finally on the other foot for the Heavy Time gang. That is Ben Pollard, Meg Cady, and Sal Abujib. They now know what it feels like to be drugged and completely disoriented and not know what's going on. And Dekker, in a delightful twist of irony, is very much in charge of them. He's in a leadership position. For what it's worth, he is genuinely good at what he does. So them learning from him is a good idea, or him being able to show them the ropes is a good idea from a pragmatic point of view. In other news, Porey, Jim Porey, I think is his name. Definitely Porey. He's back from the climax of Heavy Time, and he is still very much I guess he's a sociopath. He might be an actual full-blown psychopath. I'm not really sure. I don't have the textbook definition in front of me, but he comes awful close. He's very ruthless, um, and it's not totally clear if he serves a master other than himself. But most important, and Graff is pissed because this guy got promoted above his head and is essentially in charge of Hellburner now, the project as opposed to the book. I'm not sure if there was anything additionally relevant other than Graff being conclusively screwed over by people he thought were his friends. We're not any closer to figuring out who put our good friend Dekker into the sim without a seatbelt. Yeah. Let me, real quick, while I'm yammering on here, see how long Chapter 11 is, because I'm looking at the next couple weeks, and at the end of this month, I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks. And I want to have this book done before that happens, if I possibly can. Okay, so Chapter 11 is borderline picayune. It is tiny, tiny. Chapter 12 is also tiny, tiny, tiny. It's maybe 20 pages between them. Slightly over 20. Let's see how long Chapter 13 is. If I can bang out 3 chapters today, and if 13 isn't too long. If 13 isn't like the entire back half of the book, 13 is also very short. How long is 14? Yes, everybody listening, this is the sort of stuff I should have done ahead of time. You're absolutely right, but I do these live, partly for that little unpredictable verisimilitude. Yeah, we could probably get up to chapter 15. Each of these is pretty short. I could definitely get up to chapter 15, and if chapter 15 is short, I can maybe do that too. I do have to start planning ahead. I don't think we run into any new major characters. I don't remember if we meet Mazian in this book, for instance. In Down Below Station, we basically don't meet Mazian, and he's kind of a driving force behind a lot of what's going on there. And he soon becomes the leader. And as a result, he becomes the leader of the Maziani. Or Matziani? So maybe it's Matzian? not Mazian. It looks like Mazian, M-A-Z-I-A-N, but the plural, the collective term, is Maziani, M-A-Z-I-A-N-N-I. I'm seeing it printed in my brain, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so 15 isn't too long. 16 is longer. We might be able to get through 15 today as well, depending. I've gotten a late start and I don't like it. Definitely we'll get up to chapter 15. Possibly we'll get, yeah, I could see 2 more. After today, 2 more sessions probably, at a guess. One of them will be pretty short. Yeah, okay. I should be able to manage that. Considering if I look at dates here, yes, I'll be fine. We will have this done by the time I have to be gone for 2 weeks. Okay, so without further ado, let's get cracking. Chapter 11. 23:45 hours, and all Dekker wanted was his own bed. Didn't want to talk to anybody. Just scuzzed through the door into a darkened barracks, went straight to his quarters around the corner and down the corridor, and got undressed on autopilot. Wasn't even thinking clearly when he heard the stir outside. A knock came at his door, and he stared at it and blinked. Second knock. He thought, what in hell? And opened it. On Mitch and Paulie and Trace and God only who else the shadows behind them were. "Want to talk to you," Mitch said, and Dekker leaned his forearm on the doorframe and reasoned that even if he could talk them into leaving him alone now, it was too late. The adrenaline he'd thought he'd run out of was up again. Sleep was gone, leaving just caffeine-ragged nerves and a body shaking with chill and exhaustion. Didn't have a shred of embarrassment left, Trace there and all. He just said hoarsely, "What?" "The rest of your guys didn't come in?" "No." "Deck, what's going on?" "I don't know what's going on. I don't know any more than the rest of you guys." Struck him then, though, that a lot of the aforesaid guys had risen to his defense in the mess hall. A couple of them had gone to hospital, and a lot of them had suffered serious inconvenience on his account. So they had some right to knock on his door in the middle of his sleep and want a piece of his hide. Mitch asked, "Is it true they're gonna bust your guys right into active? That they're gonna put Pollard and Katie and Abijib straight in?" Wasn't hiding any damn thing around here. He'd been trying to get the same admission out of testing, and he couldn't do it. Or find out who the order came from that had shoved his crew straight out of aptitudes into the board sims. He stared at Mitch a beat or two, muttered, "Something like." "Something like? They're gonna take Katie's hours for legit?" "Mitch, I don't know what they're doing for anything. Nobody's told me a damn thing. I don't know what your source is, but it's more than I know." "So where are they right now?" "In the labs, sleeping it off. They started in at 0600 and they got through somewhere around 2200. That's all I know, except they're aptituded in. That's the only official word I have on anything." He got short. His temper was on edge, but he hadn't reassured anybody. And maybe they'd heard something. He hadn't been in the rumor mill all day. He'd been chasing around in places rumors didn't get to, back and forth between offices and evaluations. And rumor was evidently saying for fact what he suspected and couldn't get the labs or the techs to admit to. Shove them up into mission ready with him? God, Porey wouldn't do that. Porey'd said himself that he wouldn't lose another ship. The fleet couldn't afford it. They weren't going to do that. They couldn't do that. Rumor is, Jamil said, the fleet thinks your guys have the stuff, so they're just going to go with them. Put them right in on the pods. They can't do that, Dekker said. It came out a thin, helpless kind of voice. No way. They haven't got ships to throw away on a notion like that. Rumor is, Mitch said, they were running some kind of new tape off Pete and the guys during the mission. Rumor is the fleet thinks they can take that tape and sub it for the whole damn training sequence. Legs nearly went out from under him. Seems, Jamil said, they wanted crew that hadn't been biased by all this prior testing. By all this prior training. Shit, no. He couldn't feel anything below the gut. He got a couple of breaths and managed to stay on his feet. This is shit, guys. I don't know where you got this, but this is shit. No way are they gonna do that. Trace said, First we got Tanza. Now we got a guy thinks he can program us like computers? Where'd you hear this stuff? In the slightly off chance, Mitch said, that we're dealing with bugs, we declined to answer that in specific. But we thought you'd like to know. Shit. He wasn't doing too well with words. His teeth started chattering. I gotta talk to the lieutenant. It's Porey we have to make a dent in. Good luck with that, Trace said. We cannot show up tomorrow, the whole lot of us. Dekker shook his head, made a wave of his hand, suddenly struggling to get control of his jaw. No, this is a man makes examples. Trust me, that I know. God, the man's freezing, Trace said. Get him a sheet or something. I know what I'm talking about. You don't pull a strike. He'll pick one of you to... Paulie got past him into his room, but he kept looking at Mitch. Guy's a control freak. I met him. Flew out here with him. A blanket settled around him. He made a stiff, half-successful grab after it, but it did nothing for his chill. He let Paulie pull him back toward the bunk, while Mitch said, You guys go on. Let's get this door shut. Mitch stayed, and Paulie did, and Jamil, and Trace. Dekker sat down on the bed, tucked the blanket around him. Mitch said, The man's making an example, all right. He's going to kill you. You understand that? High team gets the next run. That's us, or that's you, Deck. You could kill yourself in Sims if one of those girls screws up. They aren't damn bad. Listen, Pollard may know what he's doing. Pollard had a background, but they hauled these girls in here for no other reason than they were with you in the action out there, and they're somewhat famous in the belt. They've got no place in the program. Fleet's listening to Hell Deck gossip. No solid background in ours. They survived. Yeah, they survived whoring their way around Hell Deck. That's what they did for a living, Dekker. I don't know if you heard, but that's the plain truth. He didn't believe he'd heard that. That was how it got as far as it did. Screw you, Mitch. You keep your opinions to yourself. All right. They're friends of yours. I'm sorry. But you came in there new. You asked Pollard where these girls got their credit. With him, with Morey, with any ship they ever handled. No bad karma for it, but they didn't make their keep with the runs they made. You stow it, Mitch. I worked with them. You never flew with them. Never knew shit what they could do, and now because they were with you, they got a rep the fleet takes for granted. They passed the aptitudes, Mitch. The examiners shoved them right into the board sims. You're telling me any of us sailed through into the sims? Hey, maybe their brain tape works. Maybe you can program human beings to act just like a robot. Just like the damn AI they tried to hang over our heads. They don't build one, they make us one. But what happens under fire, Deck? What happens when the answer isn't in any damn tape and those girls don't know it? That's when it's going to make a difference. Meg's the coolest head under fire I ever saw. Meg saved our asses on R2, and you weren't there, Mitch. You couldn't get to us. If you want me to bring that up, well, you can thank God she caught a bullet, because if Meg Cady had been flying, she might have taken out the Hamilton. Don't blind yourself, Deck. She was a second-rate miner jock who got caught running contraband. She's got a Helldeck rep, and now they're going to hype her and Abujib and Pollard on some techie tape and put you head-to-head with us. I don't want to see you crack up. I don't want to see those girls hurt. I don't have a personal grudge against them. I just have a real gut reaction when I see somebody running totally on rep and getting someone else fucking killed. Deck, and sending this program down the outshoot. Maybe we'll see, he said, set his jaw and looked elsewhere, because he didn't have anything left to say on the subject, and he was too tired and too shaken to punch Mitch out. There were things he could say, like firstly, where were you, Mitch, when we were depending on you? But he didn't honestly know that answer. He'd been too charitable to ask, and he didn't want a war with Mitch. Mitch is a mouth, he told himself. Mitch was born with an attitude. He wouldn't deal with me, except I'm the competition, and he has to take me seriously. It's Shepard, that's all it is. Meg's in-systemer, and she's Flash, and they don't like her style. That's the problem. Jamil said, Deck, you have to protect yourself. I don't personally know whether Cady and Abujib have got it. I think Pollard probably does, but not the way they need to have it now. The examiners didn't bust them through into the shims because they're good. They busted them through because they were told to. That's the truth, Deck. And we're worried. We're worried for you. We're worried for your crew. We're worried for the reason that we signed up for this program in the first place. Because we're in the center of some serious games here. We got Congresses playing games with a ship we could fly if they'd get the hell off our backs and quit screwing with the way we work. We don't want to see you killed, Mitch said. We don't want to see anybody else killed. You better find out what's going on. You better find out what your crew's capable of before you put your lives on the line out there. That's what I'm saying. The lieutenant hasn't got any power to do anything about anything right now. But he might tell you the truth, and he might listen. And he might pass what he knows to the captain, who is the only authority we can think of who might pull the plug on this damn tape. It's what they use Union side, Trace said. That's where they got the tech. They don't even know what they're doing with it, that's my guess. They just got it. They can't come up with a fix on the program. And now they're going to try this. They're going to try to make you the guinea pigs. You've got to lay back, Dick. Lay back and lay out and don't try to take those guys real time. Mitch took Jamil's arm, hauled him to the door. Trace lingered, just stood there, the only female in the group, with, he suddenly uncharitably surmised, other intentions than argument. Go on, he said. Out. Dick, I know they're friends of yours. That's what... Trace, get the hell out. Now. And turn out the lights. She turned out the lights. She left. He fell back on the wreckage of the bedclothes and felt the cold hit his chest and stomach. Thought about getting up and putting the bed back in order, but he didn't, right now, have the fortitude. He just rolled over in the blanket and tried to fall unconscious, if sleep was out of reach. But images rolled over and over like riot behind his eyes. The argument with Meg about her flying. Graff sitting there and telling him to get over to testing. Porey saying, "You're meat until you prove otherwise." But the sequencing of events didn't make sense. They'd brought Meg and Sal here to wake him up. They'd had to start from the belt directly after the accident, directly after he ended up in hospital. They'd brought Ben from closer in, and Ben had gotten here faster. That was all. But they must have started at the same time. They'd had the hearing, Graff had said, and they'd wanted him to testify. But he hadn't. And still Porey had come in to take the program over. And they had tapes. Tapes they'd made off Pete and Ellie and Falcone on the mission, leading up to the wreck. Union tech, then, the same deep drug tech they'd sworn once they could beat. But the ship wasn't up to specs, and the program was screwed, and they had to keep their funding going, had to keep getting the ships built. So the fleet had seized control, and they had to have another pony show? They swore to somebody they'd get the program turned around, and to do that, they had to hold out some brand new techie trick that was going to win the war so they could get the money. They wanted to try out the tech on unbiased crew. And for that, they hauled in Meg and Sal clear from the belt, pulled in Edmund Porey and a carrier, blasted away from Saul Station like a bat out of hell an hour after the riot in the mess hall landed him and half the program in the brig. Then Porey had wanted to talk to him personally when he hadn't, that he knew, talked to Mitch or any of the other recruits in any private interview. Porey knew him personally, at least insofar as they'd met during his trip out from the belt in the first place. Porey had ferried him out from the belt. It wasn't impossible that Porey had his hand on his career long before this, maybe even suggested him for the program when they enlisted him. He had no idea, but Porey had been in a position to have done that. Maybe that was why the interview in the office that had gone so badly. Maybe Porey was justifiably angry that he'd been in the center of controversy, when Porey had brought him here specifically to keep him out of media attention because of the Salazar mess. Then his mother, devoutly nonviolent, got fired and went after Mars Corp. And peacer groups showed up with lawyers to back her suit? He lay shivering in his bed, thinking, why? On the frenetic edge of exhausted sleep. Everything looped back, as if he was the gravity well nothing could escape. There were so many things that didn't make sense. There were so many pieces of his life being gathered up and shaken. Everything that went wrong from here to Pell seemed to have his name on it, in bright, bold caps. Paul F. Dekker. A guy couldn't have that kind of luck. No way in hell one stupid minor jock could just chance to be where carriers moved and officers intervened. And Graff just happened to care so much he went to all the trouble to collect his friends to rescue him? Like hell. Like hell, Lieutenant, sir. What was I going to say to him? Graff asked. Ask these people and they might give you what you want, but damn it, you don't deal with them like that. Demas said, in his null-G on monitored sanctuary in the heart of the carrier. Nothing you can do, JG. No way to stop it even if you'd known in advance. This was decided at much higher levels. Did you know? What do you know? Demas shook his head. I don't and I didn't. I would guess there was consultation. I would hope there was consultation of more than Porey with his own captain. But knowing what Mazian decides these days, I have some trepidation on that account. But who knows? Tape tech works for Union. Not at the cost, Graff said, and looked left at a sound that in no wise belonged in this place. Saito. Medicinal, Saito said. The bottle Saito had just uncapped broke 5 regulations Graff could think of immediately. It was glass, it was private property in an ops storage area. Ops area storage, sorry. It was liquid, it was alcoholic, and it probably hadn't passed local customs. It was, however, null-stopped, and Saito sailed it his direction. You're not on call. Jean-Baptiste is on the line. We're still on stand-down. You need your sleep, and your morality won't let you. So join the rest of us and turn it in. So where do you do that? Fleet HQ? There must be a waiting line. It seems a damn busy traffic. Yeah, no, I read that right. It seems a damned busy traffic this year. There's nothing we can do. No help to the boy, ruining yourself. If we were asked this instant, you're worthless. If we were attacked this instant, you are worthless. Best you know it beyond a doubt. He took a sip and made a face at the sting, and in the midst of his indignation realized flavors still evolving on his tongue, an unfolding sensory sequence, the way earthly flavors tended to do. Nothing simple. Nothing exactly quantifiable. From instant to instant he liked and loathed the taste. He found it significant that the sensory overload could reach even through his present mood to say it was rich, it was expensive, it was, if you could synthesize it, only one of endless variations on which a whole trade flourished. From a gravity well in which Conrad Mazian had been sunk for weeks. "This place corrupts," he murmured. "It's the mother well of corruption. When did we forget what we came here to prevent?" "Take another, J.G. Edmund Porey is in charge of the people in charge of the tape. He brought the tape. He brought the applications techs. They're officially Carina crew." "What are we fighting to keep away from? What in hell are we fighting to keep out of Saul's system?" Demas caught the bottle that drifted from his hands, took a sip and sent it on to Saito, third leg of their drift-skewed triangle. Demas said, "I earnestly recommend sleep, J.G. Perhaps a night of thorough debauch. We might manage that. There's absolutely nothing else we can do." "We can help the boy. We can at least do something about his next of situation." "Technically, Ingrid Dekker is not, next of. Pollard is. Dekker explicitly took her out of that status. For her safety. He knows the situation. That's why he didn't call on her." Saito frowned, cradled the bottle in her arms. "I've been over and over the Dekker file. There is a remote possibility someone at Sol 1 leaked the story about Dekker's accident. The information was at Sol 1 via FleetCom, and no one can never assume there was no leak. One hopes not, but it's remotely possible she might have found out, and she may have learned about Salazar's proceedings against her son. She might have taken action of her own. But there is that last troubling letter from the mother to Dekker, in his file." "In which she tells him not to communicate? But he disregarded it." "He doesn't know we monitor these things." "He should suspect. You think she may have attacked Marscorp in revenge for her son?" "Difficult. Difficult case. Neither Corey Salazar nor Dekker had a father of record. Not an uncommon situation for Mars, much less so for Sol 1. Sol's still very tied to the mother well. In all senses. Ingrid Dekker had a son. Had she named a father, tests would have established paternity. That man would have had financial and legal liability, under local law." "Possibility she didn't know?" "Possibility she didn't know or didn't want to say. It would extend legal rights to the child. She took full financial responsibility. She had the child. Again, her choice." Graff frowned, revising attitudes. He had no idea who his own father was, but his mother had had a cheerful account of possibilities, all from one ship. Who had not the least liability in the matter? Not for him, and not for his cousins of the same stopover. Who might even be half Sibs, but who cared? Earth certainly did. "Mother," said Saito, "has nothing to do with ship loyalty. Not in the least. Unitary family. He grew up in a 2 or 3 room apartment alone with one woman. No Sibs, no cousins, no other kin. Not an abnormal situation. Not the local ideal, either." Claustrophobic, what he could feel about it. He watched Saito take a drink and sail the bottle back to him. "Dekker did not get on well in school," Saito said. "Fell in with a group of young antisocials, read quasi-rab, and got caught vandalizing station life support. A series of smoke bomb incidents has happened. One might assume it was their idea of a political statement." A very stupid one. He had read the file, though not with Saito's interpretation. Sabotaging one's own life support hardly qualified as intelligence, and Dekker was far brighter than that, or should have been. He got very little education. It's all classroom theory there, very little hands-on. Dekker doesn't learn by lecture. His episode with the court nearly had his mother fired and deported for a minor out of control. On a merchanter ship, it would have had the youngster scheduled for a station drop and a go-over by Sykes. Possibly with mother or cousin in tow, but not absolutely. There was no use for such a case aboard. But Dekker was not insane. Quite remarkably sane, considering his upbringing. Graff took a sip and frowned, passing it on to Demas. She spent her personal bank account on lawyers and bond for the boy's behavior, Saito said. She enrolled him in vocational training, electronics, her own profession. He ducked out of that and got a position pushing freight. Lied about his age, made very little money, but he was out of trouble. He went back to school, probably found out he needed the math for a license, and apparently became an upstanding citizen, though by this time he was in remedial in all his subjects. One brush with the Rab, and no other troubles, he said, until the belt. Until he absconded with Alice Salazar's daughter, with whom he'd been a correspondent since his return to school. Said Demas, the miraculous reform. And no record there, Saito said, until Corey's death. A model citizen. Solvent. On Miss Salazar's money. But solvent. A hard worker. He had been on Sol before he left. Had, one suspects, a habit of pushing himself beyond the legal limits on his license. Certainly a talent, Graff murmured, thinking, why did no one at Sol ever aptitude him? With that score and social responsibility, I don't think anyone ever thought of tracking him for ops. A mortal waste. Earth has a million more who want the slot. They can afford human waste. Dekker's a statistical anomaly, especially in that population. But they didn't recognize the profile. Sports or trouble, that was their analysis. And he was off the team very quickly. He wasn't physically adept, of course, and temper didn't serve him well. You do not frustrate that lad. But you know that. Morbidly interesting, Graff thought, to know what a profile like his own might have meant. In the Motherwell. Pressure on the genome. Demas muttered, Yaburi or Wallingsford? And Saito, don't we fight this war for that distinction? Who knows why we fight? Because we stayed by the because we stayed by the company? But what's the company? Not wise, nor representative of the Motherwell. Oh, that's Demas, sorry. Who knows why we fight? Because we stayed by the company? But what's the company? Not wise, nor representative of the Motherwell. Nothing I've met tells me that answer. Demas passed the bottle again to Saito. Graff asked, can we help his mother? We've civilians working in FSO. Maybe she could be employed there. There's that piece of contact. She certainly won't pass our security clearance. With that... Oh, wait a minute. That might be Saito. Nope, that's Demas. There's that piece of contact. She certainly won't pass our security clearance with that attachment. The bottle came back to him. Because she's naive and desperate, she's a security risk? She wouldn't have access to the FSO lunch schedule. Saito said, being Dekker's kin and outside our wall is a security risk. And there's the vid. The Dekker affair may have died out of the media, but watch them remember it now. Command will be extremely reluctant to solidify that association. The Peacer connection... Our employing her could be an interesting embarrassment to their side. And there's the claim of harassing Salazar. A most uncomfortable thought occurred to him. You don't think Salazar could have hired Ms. Dekker's lawyer to control both sides of the lawsuit? Not legal, of course, to pay both sides legal help. That much is true even in Sol's system. Possible, though, isn't it? Whoops. Possible, though, isn't it? Their system of exchange makes a private transaction hard to trace. Oh, it's even possible the Peacer groups see Salazar as a way to their objectives. Possible that the money is flowing to this conflict from the peace and the defense committees. Mars is relatively leftist, relatively isolationist. They see their interests remote from the EC as a whole. Pursue some of these groups deeply enough, and you come out the door of their opposition. Mobius Finance, Demas said. These groups survive on fundraising, particularly their executives and staff. How could these people survive without each other? Completely paranoid. The enemy of my enemy, Demas said, and took the bottle up, threatens both our livelihoods. And of course the fleet is innocent in this game. Earth's parliaments and congresses understand Mazian. Mazian gains command of R&D, of Sol 2. God, one wonders what traded hands. Graff thought privately, and dared not say, even to them, our integrity, our command. Mazian was going to fill the captaincies with his choices. Porey among the first. Fingers felt all right. Wasn't sure about the ownership of the hand, though. Skitsy experience, that was. Meg held her eye from blinking with one set of fingers and tried to apply the pencil without blinding herself. Deck had been kind enough to make a supplies run from the quarters to the lab dorm, only thing she'd asked of him last night. Get our makeup. God, we got to look like hell. Deck was a skosh biz last night, she said to Sal, who was putting earrings in, stealing a bit of mirror past her shoulder. Don't you think? Man's doing all right. You? You had to catch Sal like that, blindside. Sal met her eyes in the mirror, wide open. So, Abajib? Sal said, scowling. Scared as I hope to be. Give me a damn field of where is it's, and some of these things are rocks, Abujib, and some of these things are missiles. I never memmed a field faster in my damned life. Pass? Hey, I didn't have a heart attack. Katie, I got seriously to talk to you about your soldier lessons. They're severely real, these some bitches. She would have turned around, but Mirrors was the best place to catch Sal. Truth, Abajib, you want to go back to the Hamilton? She saw the hesitation, the nip of a lower lip. Without? And had this moment with her heart up in her throat. She'd passed, damn it, they'd told her. Finally got a chance at a ship and a guy she got on with, and, damn it all, here was Sal pulling in the other direction. She saw it plain. And it was a lot of hours with Sal, a lot of bad times and a lot of good, but on the other hand, there was Deck. There was Deck, who, God. Sal's frown had gone. The lower lip rolled out in a rueful sulk. I don't know, Katie. I don't know how you talk me into things. I don't know how you talk me into these things. Abajib, come serious. You want to be back there. I tell you what, I seriously want a little damn couple finesses on that simulation. They got no mem check. There's not a damn interset macro in there. Maybe they've been getting this thing from Shepherd types. Ought to ask a free runner about rocks, Katie. Ought to ask us how not to go boom in a fire track. I'm not asking that. Well, I'm not the hell going back to the Hamilton. Leave you here with the guys? Frivolous, deliberate. The mask was back, and Abujib's long eyes were half-lidded. I lay you bets, Katie. Flick of a nail against a large earring. Ben didn't flunk that, Mama. Not our Ben. Scare hell out of 'em the way they did me. And they never get a Class A performance. So with this child. Minor nerves here. Don't tell me, fire track. They're saying I got to set up the positionals. Somebody else is going to have his finger on the fire button? Shit all. I want the guns, Katie. You effing right I passed, deck boy. No question I'd pass if I wanted to. Aptituded. Hell, they put me in arms comp. Are you satisfied? Dekker wasn't. He sincerely didn't want that. He watched Ben shaving in this dormitory the labs offered their test subjects and kept his chilled hands in his pockets. Sorry doesn't cover it. I know, but Ben looked around him. You're worried, deck boy. Tell me why you're worried. He wasn't sure he ought to say that either, since Ben didn't know, since self-doubt was the deadliest creature you could take into the program. The program was full of egos. Ben's was fairly healthy. So what's the matter? Ben prodded him. He had to say something, because somebody would back in barracks. Say the fleet has that new program. Say they came up with this tape stuff. You mean what they gave us wasn't reg? He was supposed to be a fast thinker. He wasn't doing well this morning. Mute as a rock he was. Look, Moonbeam, what in hell are they up to? Gives a guy a real uneasy feeling, that look of yours, and you're the lousiest liar I know of. It's supposed to work, that's all I know. Ben gave him a long, suspicious stare. All I know, Dekker said, and Ben said, Hell if, what's going on? Nothing, he said. Nothing but they want results. Fast. And the heat's on my tail. But it doesn't get to you guys. It doesn't. Yeah? They put you in command, did they, of the whole friggin' fleet? No. Porey said it. They don't want to lose another ship. And I swear to you, I won't lose another crew. Chapter 12. Glowing lines converged. Dekker blinked sweat, and the simulator manufactured an uncharted rock on split second imminent for the carrier. Missed the bastard and redirect to take it out on the fly. Got it. Got the beta target before the blood flow caught up with his knees. Target's coming. Carrier showed up on the scope. That was the priority. Your carrier showed, and you got the come home, and you were done. Far as you could clear it a path. Granted, you could get through the effect shield without glitching. Soft and smooth. You got the slight buffet as you came through the shield. Momentary LOS of everything on the boards. You had to know it's V. And you had to know it's V. The extent of those shields. How close you were going to be when you came through the envelope. Damned close. Damned close. Touch. Slight mismatch. Within tolerance. Probe caught. Mate. Power down. Good run. Solid run. Not flashy, except that UO and making that shot. He could cut the sim, melt down and unbelt. He'd earned it and a hot shower. Fine control when you'd been hyped was hell, and switch off was the co-pilot's job, if there'd been a co-pilot this sim. He wouldn't lose points on that. But he was a fussy sumbitch. He set his switches. He set every effing one. Damn, it felt good. Felt solid. Home again. He shifted his legs as the pod opened, and he could unbelt and drift out. Breath frosted, while sweat still ran under the flight suit. Take that in your stats, Tanzer. Card game went on, Ben and Sal running up favor points on Almarshad's and Mitch's guys, and the spectators drifted down there. Hey, Deck, came back, but Dekker tried to ignore it and concentrate on his math and his set targets for tomorrow's run. Conversation floating back from the table said, "It's one thing in Sims. Live fire's gonna be something else." "You just hit 'em," Ben said, and took a card. "Dots is dots." "No way," Wilson said. "Ask Wilhelmsen." "They don't have to," Mitch said, and a chill ran through Dekker's bones. He was thinking what to say to shut that up when Meg said, acidly, "Dunno a thing about Pete Fowler, mister. Nice guy, I suppose, and I highly appreciate his help, but he's not the one does the thinking." Ah, jeez Louise, one sec. That was a phone call I really didn't want to take. Where was I? "You just hit 'em," Ben said, and took a card. "Dots is dots." "No way," Wilson said. "Ask Wilhelmsen." "They don't have to," Mitch said, and a chill ran through Dekker's bones. He was thinking what to say to shut that up when Meg said, acidly, "Dunno a thing about Pete Fowler, mister. Nice guy, I suppose, and I highly appreciate his help, but he's not the one does the thinking." "Still not live fire, Katie." "He's off," Dekker said, and shoved his chair back. "Hey," Mitch said, "no offense." "Doesn't bother me," Meg said, and dealt out cards. "Testosterone's not the only asset going. Shepard's seriously got to rethink that." "Meg," Sal said. "Hey, I'm easy." "You been easy, Katie." "You been easy, Katie." Meg pursed her lips. "You a virgin, Mitch? I swear I don't know." Hold it," Ben said. "The program's making a serious mistake," Mitch said, "putting you girls in here. Tape can't..." Is there really going to be like a 5-alarm fire every time I do these? Seriously. Why do I leave my window open? "The program's making a serious mistake," Mitch said, "putting you girls in here. Tape can't give you the wiring, Katie. There's a reason they never pulled women in on this program." "Yeah," Meg said acidly. "Look at the scores, Mitch." "Meg," Dekker said, "tape off a real pilot..." Whoops. "Tape off a real pilot, Katie." That tore it. "Mitch," Dekker said. "No, no," Meg said coolly. "Not a problem, Deck. Man's just upset." "Bitch." "Yo," Sal said. "You want to match score and score, Mitchell?" "Just hold it," Dekker said into the rising mutter from Mitch's crew and Almarshad's. "We don't need this." "We don't need any damn tape," Mitch said, "and we damn sure don't need any tape off any women. Reactions aren't there. You're never going to see a female pilot on this ship, Katie. You don't see 'em in the carriers and you don't see 'em in the riders, and you're never going to. You'll crack under fire. You're going to screw this whole damned program on a rep you didn't earn." Meg said, with a riffle of cards, "Cher, you got a truly basic misconception there. Ships aren't she's, they're he's."
You got to make love to them the right way. You got to keep them collected so you both get there.
Laugh from some of the guys, thank God. Wasn't funny at the table. Mitch was pissed. Mitch was being a son of a bloody bitch, was what he was being. Hurt feelings and a mouth that made you want to knock him sideways. But Mitch gathered up the cards Meg dealt. You're in over your head, Katie.
Sure, I had a shuttle go dead once, lost a motor on lift, landed in the Seychelles, and that was a bitch. I haven't sweated since.
Bullshit.
Yeah, tell me yours.
Mitch glowered a moment, then laid down a card and said, Well divers are fools.
You got that, Meg said. I resigned it.
Didn't resign it, Sal said. They threw you out.
I was getting tired of it. Too much same stuff. You seen Luna once, you've seen it. Big damn rock.
Smug bitch, Mitch said, in better humor. Dekker eased back and found himself shaking, he was so wound up. But Meg wasn't. Cold as ice, or she hadn't any nerves between her hands and her head. Couldn't tell she might want to knife Mitch Mitchell, but he'd laid odds, Mitch knew. Damn, you got a rhythm in this thing. See those programs. See how that info dump selected for the human operator and how it prioritied. That was a serious question. They'd had a problem like that in TI, putting a human into the supercomputer neural net without letting it take over info selection. This one sampled the human needs as well as the environment, and it wasn't doing all it could. The data behind it was flatline. He pushed it, and it gave him the same input. You're not supposed to critique it, Pollard. Just stick to the manuals. Screw the... Begging your pardon, but I worked on something like this. Stop and Tech program or independent? Classified. He bit his lip, didn't raise the question of his clearance. Just a minute, Pollard. Just a minute was all right. He sat and stared at the screen that offered such interesting prospects. Info drop for the human decision, and info compression for the computer. Reality sampling against a chaos screen in a system Maury Bird's prize numbers had... Whoops. Reality sampling against a chaos screen in a system Maury Bird's prize numbers man found achingly familiar after a stint in TI's securitied halls. Screw supply systems modeling. This thing talked to him with a familiar voice. This isn't sim software, he thought. Main program's elegant. This is real, isn't it? Ignore the cheesy recorded randoms, son of a bitch. The system under this is a piece of work. He said to the air, Tech didn't do this, did they? No answer for a minute. Then a different voice. Pollard, leave the programs alone. You can feel the randoms. I didn't have to look for them. A pause. That's very good, Pollard. What would you suggest we do about it? Obvious answer to the obvious question. The belt. The numbers. The charts. The feeling you got for the system. The way the rocks moved. Real rocks, with the well perturbing what the sun ruled. Shakespeare and Bird. Ben, leave the damn charts. Ben, leave the damn charts. Pollard, what would you do? I'm sure you have, he said. You saw. Or Pell, or Viking. You haven't met Tripoint, Pollard. Would you like to see Tripoint? That one's an excellent example. Balls hit and rebounded on the table. Actually, I should rewind a little. So what they're talking about here is kind of oblique. Like it's not obvious unless you've like, especially the way I've read it was a bit more stilted than I'd have liked. But what just happened is they're basically using data sets pulled from actual locations. They're using real data. In this case, I think Ben Pollard has caught that they're using something from the belt, some pattern of rocks or potential object data points. And so they're saying, okay, you're good. You can tell that that's from the belt. Now we have to throw you something different to have a valid test. Or, so that you see something different and know that it's not necessarily the program, but it's the information that we have as well. Balls hit and rebounded on the table. Ben walked around the other end, considering his next shot, gave a twitch of his shoulders, estimated an angle, and took careful aim with the cue. Sal said. Ben was sure it was Sal's voice behind him. Muscles were absolutely limp this evening. He was a little off his game, give or take a year's hiatus. Dekker, the scuzz, had had practice. Keep the run going. He didn't want the cue in Dekker's hands, not from what he'd seen. 2 in succession. It was rec hall, bar in the middle. A lot of UDC guys on permission down there, drowning their sorrows. Fleet at this end, some of them too. And a scatter of Marine guards. More khaki around the corridors than Ben personally found comfortable, thank you. Real ringer of a sim this afternoon. He'd earned a beer, damn it, but they had him up again tomorrow. Same with all of them. Opened his big mouth and they'd reset the sim, all right. Dots and more dots, in a space where the effin' familiar sun didn't exist. Spooky situation. Wanted to feel it out, and you were busy tracking damn dots. Gentle shot. Balls rebounded. Come on, come on. Ouch, Sal said. Shit. Dekker drew a breath. Armscomper wasn't the opponent you'd choose in this game. Pilot versus Armscomper got bets down. Never mind he'd had practice Ben swore you didn't have time to take at TI. Hell if. Ben had learned it somewhere, Helldeck maybe. And a belter didn't show you any mercy. You damn sure didn't want to let him get the cue back. He saw his shot, lined it up. Bets were down. Favor points. Military didn't let you play with money. And nobody had any. Click and drop. Sighs from half the spectators. Muted cheers from the rest. Second shot. Ball dropped. Balls rearranged the pattern. He was sore when he bent to survey the situation, but it was a good kind of soreness, kind you get from a hard run. Never had realized there was good pain and bad. He'd felt the other kind. Too damn much. Click. Right on, Deck! Meg and Sal had bets on opposite sides. He grinned, took aim. Click. Perfect bank. Sudden disturbance, then, in the ambient. Dekker felt it, looked up as everybody else was looking, at a handful of UDC guys who'd showed up at the table. Marines were in motion, starting to move between. Rob Childers, Kesslin, and Deke. Chad's crew. A Marine said, "Let's not have any trouble. Get on back there." Rob said, "Dick." He felt a sudden queasiness in the approach, a sense of confrontation. The Marines weren't pushing. They weren't letting the UDC crew closer, either, and there was starting to be noise. Other UDC guys moving in. "Wait a minute," Al-Marshad protested. Thank God somebody on their side had the sense to say something, offer a hand to object.
Oh, offer a hand to object to force, and he had to move himself, had to do something in the split second. He dropped the cue to his left hand, took a non-belligerent stance. Deck, Rob said, and held out his hands. Put him entirely on the spot. Marines didn't move, didn't know who was who or what was happening here. He scoped that. Scoped the moment and the move and the necessity to do something before they all ended up in the brig. Rob, he said, and went quietly past a confused Marine and took the offered hand, looked Rob in the face and wondered if Rob was the one who'd tried to kill him, or if Rob knew who had. He took Keslin's hand, and Deke's. The music system was grinding out a muted, bass-heavy beat that had the silence all to itself. Too much gone on, Rob said. Both sides. He had to say something. He took that inspiration, said, Yeah, has, and couldn't find anything else to say. Let you get back to your game, Rob said. Yeah, all right. He stood there while the room sorted itself out again, Rob and the rest going back to their side. He never managed to say the right thing. He didn't know what he could have said. He felt a hand on his arm. Meg pulling him back to the table, while Franklin muttered, Shit all. They do it? Mason asked him under his breath. He gave it a desperate thought, trying to believe they were innocent. But he remembered getting hit, remembered the pod access, and couldn't be analytical about the dark, and the pain of his broken bones, and the toneless voice that said, in the back of his memory, Enjoy the ride, Dekker. Tape going into the slot. The voice said, Let me. Let me what? Wasn't anybody but the pilot handled the mission tape. Didn't make sense. He didn't answer Mason. He got down and lined up his shot again, determined. Made it. There was a sigh of relief. He was relieved too. Was all he asked, for his pride's sake. Didn't want to show how rattled he was. He focused down and made a run of 3 before a ball trembled on the verge of a drop. And didn't. All right, Ben said, out of a sigh and a stillness. Ben sounded less than satisfied. Everything seemed paler, colder. He didn't know why. He stood by Meg and Sal, arms folded, and watched Ben make a straight run. UDC MPs looked in on the situation. You couldn't hear the music over the voices. When things were normal, you couldn't. He wanted a drink, but Regs didn't let him have one. He thought of desperate means to get one, but if they caught you at it, you were screwed. He didn't want a session with Porey. Didn't. Bets got finalized. He'd bet himself, as happened, so had Ben, and Sal could collect. But something passed between Meg and Sal, and Meg took his arm and said Sal was taking a weight ticket. You better get to bed, Meg said, and he'd have paid off. He wouldn't have minded. He was halfway numb at the moment. Her change in arrangements made him think maybe he was better with Sal, who wouldn't pry. Sal and he never had gotten into each other's reasons for anything. But Meg had set up what she evidently thought was a rescue, and he gave himself up and went off with her. She was upbeat, cheerful, talking about the game, not a single question who that had been or why. Must have gotten her information on her own, because Meg didn't favor ignorance. Depend on it. She got him to bed, was willing to go slow if he'd had the inclination. He didn't, and wrapped herself around him after and snuggled down to keep him warm, about the time Ben and Sal came trooping through. Shh, Meg hissed, and they were immediately quiet, quiet coming and going to the bathroom. The front room had its drawbacks, but he was on the edge of falling asleep, suddenly exhausted. Glad he'd made some sort of peace, he decided, even if their move had put him on the spot and forced what he wasn't ready for. Likely they weren't the ones who'd ambushed him. He hadn't been sure of that when he'd taken Rob's hand, and even if he was somewhat sure now, he couldn't come to peace with it, couldn't forgive them, could he? If there was nothing to forgive in the first place, if they were innocent and it was somebody else he saw every day in the corridors, ate with in the mess hall. Maybe whoever had put him in the hospital had been in the crowd getting a further kick out of his confusion. He'd lost an argument or two when he was a kid. He'd lived through the chaff he had to take. He'd faced the guys again. They'd been 2 years older. He'd lived in fear and gotten hell beaten out of him a couple of times by the same guys before he'd made them believe they were going to take so much damage doing it that they didn't want to keep on his case. Not the ideal outcome he'd have wanted, but at least he could believe he'd settled it. At least he'd made a point on them, and at least they didn't give him any more trouble. But out there, in front of everybody, they'd put him directly on the spot. Damn them. Yeah, he could have acted the touchy son of a bitch Ben said he was, told them to go to hell and had the program in a mess and the lieutenant ready to kill him. He'd had an attack of responsibility, he decided finally. Mature judgment, or something. His mother had sworn he'd never live that long. But it didn't solve his own problem, just theirs. He was still walking around, not knowing, still a target for another try, God only when, or on what provocation. In the meanwhile, he knew those he'd trust with his life, and those he just didn't know. In the meantime, somebody was off scot-free and probably laughing about it. "You all right, Cher?" Meg stirred beside him, massaged a shoulder. He realized the tension he had then, probably as comfortable as a rock to be next to. "Yeah," he tried to relax. "Cold." Meg put a warm arm over his back. "Roll over, Jeune fille. No questions. Do. We got Sims in the morning. Big day. Relax." Couldn't understand why she put up with him. Couldn't understand why Ben did, except Sal was with Meg. He wished he could do better than he did, wished he could say they weren't in a mess of his making. But it was. And they were. And Meg somehow didn't care he was a fool. The rec hall was quiet. It was a question whether to acknowledge what had happened or ignore it. But the former, Graff decided, word having drifted his way via Fleet Security via Sergeant Major Lynch. Probably word had drifted to Porey, too, and no orders had come. But it was personnel's business to take a tour while the alter-day galley staff was cleaning up. Music was still going. Most of the participants were back in barracks, hopefully. "Quiet here?" he asked a Marine on watch. "Quiet, sir." "Any feeling of trouble?" "No, sir, not lately. Real quiet, sir." He made no approach toward the last few celebrants, a few UDC, a few fleet personnel, a little the worse for drink, at opposite ends of the hall. He wasn't there on a disciplinary, but he was meant to be seen. His being there said command levels had heard, command levels were aware. Dekker hadn't blown it, by all he'd heard. He didn't know where the idea had started. He didn't know that it had done any good, but at least it had done no demonstrable harm. Someone walked in at his back, walked up beside him. "Table's still standing," Villy said. "Noted that. Hope it lasts," Villy said. "Difficult time." Villy had never said anything about the change in command. Like having your ship taken out of your hands, Graff thought. Like watching it happen on, Villy had said. Like watching it happen on, Villy had said, the last big project he'd ever work on. What did you say? What, in the gulf between his reality and Villy's, did one find to say? "Good they did that," he said. "I hope it takes." Hello, a optical antenna. Sorry if you posted like an hour ago and I didn't see it. Chapter 13. Big empty section of the mast. You'd know where you were blindfolded. Null G with the crashes of locks and loaders and the hum of the core machinery, noises that made the blood rush with the memories of flights past and anticipation of another, no helping it. Meg took a breath of cold, oil-touched air, a breath that had the flight suit pressing close, snug as a hardened skin, and hauled with one hand to get a right-side-up view of what Deck had to show them. A screen with a live camera image from, she guessed, optics far out along the mast. Big shadow shape of the carrier. Wouldn't all fit in the picture. With spots on its hull picked out in patchwork detail, all gray and huge. And on the hull, near the bow, a flat, sleek shape clung, shining in the floods. "That's it?" Ben asked. "That's it," Deck said. "Her, whatever you want to call it. They built 3 prototypes. That's the third. That's the one that's make or break for us. Crew of 30 when we prove it out. 4 can manage her, in a clean course with set targets. Most of her mass is ordnance, ablation edge, and engine load. You've had the briefings." Meg stood by Sal's side and got a shiver down the back that had nothing to do with the cold here. Beautiful machine, she was thinking. Sal said, "Brute job," and meant the same thing. Brute job. Brute job, and meant the same thing. In a moment, it sounded as if, or of pure, gut-deep lust. Sal said, comma space, brute job, comma space, and meant the same thing, comma, in a moment, comma, it sounded as if, comma, of pure gut-deep lust, period. That is a lot of commas. Thank you. Wasn't any minor can, that wicked, shimmery shape. And most imminently, in the sim chamber behind the clear observation port, the pods, one in operation, a maglev rush around the chamber walls, deafening as the wall beside them carried the vibration. "Damn," she breathed, but you wouldn't hear it. "The pods you see moving," Deck said, over the fading thunder, "that's the tame part. That rush is the dock and undock. They can take those pods more positive or neg Gs than your gut's going to like. But that's not the dangerous part. That pod, there, the still one," he pointed at one floating motionless, away from the walls. "That's the real hell ride. Could be at 3/4 light, what you know from inside. That's the one they mop the seats on. That's the one can put you in hospital. Unstable as hell in that mode. Screw it, and you'll pull a real sudden change." "Thanks," Ben said. "I like to hear that. Damn, I like to hear that." I did not convey that well. He does not like this. Ben is being sarcastic. "Thanks," Ben said. "I like to hear that. Damn, I like to hear that." Meg said, "Going to be all right. No problems. Here?" But Deck looked up at that pod in a way she kept seeing after he'd turned away and told them it was up the lines to the pod access, like an addict looking at his addiction, and a guy scared as hell. "Take you on the ride of your life," was the way he put it. "Now wait a minute," Ben said. But Deck took out on the hand lines, and Sal snagged Ben's arm with, "Now, Sheriff, if we don't keep up with Deck and Meg here, they'll assign us some sheer fool pilot who we don't know the hell who. Whoops. They'll assign us to some sheer fool pilot we don't know the hell who. Do you want to go boom on a rock? No, not. So soyez gentle and don't distract the jeune fille." No, Graff said. No, Colonel, I don't know. I've got a meeting with him. He's got no right, was the burden of Tanzer's phone call, which didn't overall help Graff's headache. Neither did the prospect of dealing with Commander Porey face to face. I'll pose him the question, he told Tanzer. Couldn't honestly blame the colonel this morning, discovering that his carefully constructed sim schedule was in revision, that Villanueva's team had been opted straight off test systems into the priority sim schedule, and three others of the test systems crews had been bumped off the sim schedule entirely in favor of Dekker and three raw recruits who'd been given access on demand on any shift. The officer in charge of personnel ought to know what was happening. One would logically think so. The officer in charge of personnel hung up the receiver, put on his coat, and took his hangover headache down the corridor to the CO's office. Marine guards let him in. Porey was all smiling, smooth congeniality. Jurgen, it was, and an offered hand as Porey got up from his desk. One had to take it or declare war. I've been going through the reports. Excellent job you've done, getting us settled into station. I don't find a thing I'd change. Sit down, sit down. Thank you, Graff said, and sat, wondering whose name those actions had gone out under in the report to Fleet Command. Hell, he knew what games Porey was playing, with the reports, with his smiling good grace. Porey's aides never knew what they'd meet when they walked into his office, the smiling bastard or the shouting, desk-pounding sumbitch, but either one would knife you. It was, knowing your career could hinge on Porey's approval, damned easy for a staffer to start twitching to Porey's cues. He could see it working in Carina Jr. crew out there in the Marine Guard. He could see it going on all around him, suggesting it might be wise for him to play Porey's game too, suggesting that this man, clearly on his way to a captaincy, and certainly in Mazian's good graces, could be a valuable contact. Except that he'd seen this game going on since they were both junior lieutenants, and he felt the urge to puke. He said, with a fixed smile, Edmund, do you think your staff could possibly give personnel any sim schedule changes a day in advance? Tanzer is not happy. I could have minimized the disturbance. Didn't that come to you? Porey was all amazement. No, it didn't come to me. I had to hear it from Tanzer. I don't like dealing with the UDC when I don't know what's going on. It makes me feel like a fool. And I don't like that, Edmund. I truly don't. Satire on Porey's own style wasn't what Porey was used to meeting. Porey had a thinking frown as he sat down, guarded amusement at the edges of his mouth. Everything for effect, most especially the expressions on his face. Peel Porey layer by layer, and you never got to center. Matters of policy, Porey said, rotating a paperweight in his fingers, are handled in this office. Tanzer has no power that you don't give him. If you choose to coddle him, that's your decision, not mine. The paperweight stopped moving. The assignment of the personnel and priorities, however, is mine. Relations with the UDC, use your talents at diplomacy. I'm sure you're up to it. Distraction, and a shot across the bow. By the procedures, personnel involves health and welfare, neither of which works when my office has no say in reassignments or system changes. Attack on his own. In consideration of which, I want a briefing on the tape learning procedures from the text that came in with you. I don't have time to read science reports. Jurgen, my staff hasn't time to handle delicate egos, Tanzer's or yours. Or 356 shepherds who've been rooked out of their seniority, lied to by the UDC, shafted by the legislature, and killed out there on the course because nobody's ever damn listened to them. Edmund, we have tempers at critical overload here, and a blow-up isn't going to look any better on your record than it looks on Tanzer's. If you want a riot, these are the ones that will do it. They're not kids. They've had too many fools in command over them here and in the belt to trust anybody now on credit. They don't reject authority. They're looking for it. They want it. But don't expect them to follow orders till they know the ultimate source is sane. Porey didn't say anything for a moment. He wasn't stupid, and he cared about his own survival. That was one thing you could believe in. Porey said softly, "You're an honest man, Jurgen. How do you plan to get out of Earth's system alive?" "By keeping my CO from making mistakes." Long, cold stare. A slow smile. "You don't have any resentment, do you, for my being installed here?" "I'm not command track. I never pretended to be." Still the stare. "You think I'm pretending?" "I don't think you're pretending anything. I know you." Feed the fantasy. And the anxiety. Porey didn't like to be known, but he liked to be respected. The man did have an ego. A parsec wide. Porey smiled slowly, in a way that almost touched the eyes. "Good. A vote of confidence from you I appreciate, Jurgen. I truly do." Sociopath. Definitely a sociopath. uh, and yes, I do see you there, AE Optical Antenna. Thank you for tuning in. I know you posted that like half an hour ago or more. But it's okay. Odd chill of unease as the pod cruised up to the access. Thump of the pressure seals. Hydraulics as it opened and offered its dark, screen-lit interior. Ordinary sounds. Shadows moved on the white plastic of the control console as Dekker put the tape in, and he felt an irrational urge to look behind him, as if his crew wouldn't be there. No damned reason to get nerves. But it had been Pete on the line beside him all the times before. It wasn't now. It wasn't Ellie. It wasn't Falcone. It was Meg, on Pete's tape, and Ben and Sal. They belonged here. He made himself believe that, stop remembering what he had been, what had been. For no reason, a piece of the puzzle snapped in, unbidden. Null G. Shadows on the console. He felt the blow at the base of his skull. He knew where he had been. At the entry. Knew where they'd been. Shadows. Two of them. Damn it. Not the time to be wool gathering. He looked back at Ben. Ben looked scared, but Ben looked on, tracking wide and fast on the pod, taking in everything, the same as Meg and Sal. All business, the way they were when the jokes stopped and they were thinking and absorbing. He gave them the lecture tour, the buttons on the console, the readout window, the authorizations procedure. Card and tape in the slot for a checkout. It reads your ID, takes your personal numbers and sets, and double checks the tape for authorizations. Ready? "Are you serious?" Ben said. Then, "Yeah, yeah, go." He caught the handholds on either side of the entry, angled his feet for inside, and eeled into his position. "Sal?" he called back, over the hum of a passing pod, caught her by the arm as she sailed into the dark shadow against the lights, a glitter of braids tied into a cluster, for safety's sake. He aimed her for the far side of the four-wide cockpit. "Ben?" Same as Ben came feet first through the hatch, for the seat between him and Sal. Meg came last, for the seat between him and the hatch, settled in. Green-lit gold on plain stud earrings. Dyed green, Green dyed her side-shaved profile. Green turned her red curls black. Ringed fingers found the belts and buckled in. Eyes glowed wide and busy in the light of the screens, assessing the instruments. He drew his own belt over. He waked reaching for them he waked reaching for them at night, with a recurring nightmare of drifting free. Suit braces powered up as he plugged in, and the helmet cut off side vision. It was deep field V-HUD now. Switches on. Power up. Comfortable? Yeah, from Meg. As possible, from Ben. Belts were tight. Second tug, to be sure. Orientation run. Starting over. Primer stuff. Only he wasn't the Neo this run. There was something surreal in the moment, in the familiar lights, in the ordinary sounds of the pod, the dark masquerading as routine. They were on, anxious, wanting to be right, but he kept expecting other voices. "This thing got any differences?" Meg asked last minute. He shoved the tape into the console, pushed load. "One, see that yellow abort upper left? Doesn't exist on the real boards. It'll stop the pod, and if you don't get a response from me, or if you detect anyone in trouble, you hit that. Takes you right back to the bay." "Sure," came Meg's low voice. "You just do. I got confidence in us." "More'n I got," Ben muttered. Hold it. I'm not set yet." "Response check. Thing doesn't glitch, but be sure. Boards are all in test mode." Passengers was all they were required to be, but that wasn't Meg's style, wasn't Ben's or Sal's either. He tried his own boards, set his arms in the supports, heard Meg's voice saying, "I got it, right on." Ben muttering, "I got it, right on." Ben muttering, "Don't screw it, deck boy." "Yeah, I'm on, go." Sal's saying, "Hit it, deck." Dark flash of lights. He kicked the thumb switch on his keys. Readout glowed green against the dark. Finger moves on opposite hands. The undock sequence switch. Bang! Of grapples. Maglevs and human voices mixed. A 6G shove butt first for 10 eternal seconds to a sustained straight at the spine shove at plus 9G. Green lines wove fast and faster. The pod was alive, and the tons of thrust were maglev sim. But it was all in his hands, responsive to a breath, a stray thought, a moment's doubt. Where he was, when he was, who he was with. He didn't want to do this. Serious panic, a flash on instruments in chaos. Then, not now. Now was now. Not a time to lose track. God, no. Focus down. Focus wide. Attention to the moving lines. That's all.
Politics, Porey said. Pure politics. Let me explain it to you. 15 of the 50 carriers have to be UDC. That's the deal we cut, and that's what we have to do. The accident gave us Hellburner, and that tape's going to give us the program. The parliaments on Earth want responsible individuals in policy positions. Read, no captains will violate policy laid down by the JLC. And this won't change in the field.
Graff stared at Porey. He thought he'd heard the depth of foolishness out of Earth. Porey made a small, sarcastic shrug.
They have our assurances. And if the news service should call your office, Jurgen, and since you're over personnel, they might. The answer you give is no. Of course these ships are launched at carrier command discretion with specific targets. No, they will never be deep launched with less specific orders. That tactic won't work.
You mean I lie?
I mean the Joint Legislative Committee's expert analysts say not. The changing situation over time, read the commanders of individual ships making decisions without communicating with each other, would make chaos of strategic operations. So it can't be done. End report. The JLC analysts say it's not appropriate use of the riders. The legislators don't like what these ships can do, combined with the irregular character of the crews we've picked to handle them. These crews are, historically, trouble Earth got rid of. Earth's strategic planners are obsessed by the difficulty they've discovered of conveying their orders to ships in the beyond. They've apparently just realized the time lag. They can't phone Pell from here and order policy about. They've always known that. The ordinary citizen hasn't. The average businessman can get a voice link to Mars now, or the Belt, if he wants one.
Lagcom was a skill, a skitsy kind of proceeding, talking to a voice that went on down its own train of logic with no regard to your event-lagged self. That was one of the reasons Senior Com and Psych were virtually synonymous. And Earth hadn't realized until now you couldn't talk to a launched rider or a star carrier? He refused to believe it.
Lagcom has finally penetrated the civil user market, Porey said, since we increased the pace of in-system traffic. Earthers are used to being told the antenna's gone LOS, used to being told Marslink is out of reach for the next few months, used to shipments en route for years and months. Supply the market counts but can't touch. Their shipborne infowave was so slow as to be paralytic before we started military operations in system. The last 2 years have upset that notion. This from the captain. So, if anyone asks you, of course we're going to have a strong mother system component in Fleet Command. Of course rider ships will never make command decisions. We're going to loop couriers back to Earth constantly.
Mazians promised this?
The same as they promised us. Jurgen, you have far too literal a mind. This is a game. They play it with their constituents. The legislature's technical advisors are under influences. Corporate, economic, political. But you've met that. They certainly won't deviate from the party line. Where does the funding for their studies come from, anyway?
Lights flared, green numbers bled past in the dark. Do the run in his sleep, Dekker kept telling himself. Piece of easy. But it didn't stop the heart from pounding, didn't stop hands and body from reacting to the situation on screen. You didn't break the reactions. You didn't ever. Just presented the targets to your inert arms comp, accepted Ben was going to miss most of the time, and tried not to let that expectation ever click into the relays of your brain. Ever click into the relays in your brain. Ugh. Screw that, he heard Ben mutter. And all of a sudden got input on his aux screens, targets lit, arms comp prioritizing. Chaff, he determined. Then targets flashed and started disappearing. Long scan was coming from a living hand, not the robot inputs. He heard "shit" from Ben and saw the scan image shift, tracking fire. Meg's gold data sift to his high-side HUD was making sudden marginal sense. Not like Pete. Not the same. Doing all right, he muttered. Just heart jumped. Hands reacted. Sim did. He stopped the bobble before his vision cleared. Guys weren't talking. Someone had yelped, short and sharp, but the dots that meant conscious were still lit. Data was still coming up on the screens. Fire was still happening. Long scan shaping up. Had three scared guys in the seats. Next 4 shots were misses. His fault. He'd pulled a panic. Lost it. Had no time now to be thinking about it. Targets. Damn it to hell!
The UDC, Porey said, rocking back his chair, believes in a good many myths. We don't disabuse them. And yes, this room is secure.
What else haven't we said? What else hasn't filtered out here? Or is this a long-standing piece of information?
The ECS-4, Porey said, is fully outfitted. Fully outfitted. We're operational, and we have a comm system they can't penetrate. To our knowledge, they haven't even detected its operation. Installation on the ECS-8 is waiting a shipment. Communications between you and FSO have been, I understand, infrequent. That situation is going to improve.
When?
Estimate 2 months, 3.
Until then, Edmund, I want to know. Who pulled Katie and Abujib out of the belt? Who opted Pollard in? Where did this damned new system come in?
Exact origin of those orders? Porey asked with a shrug. I'm sure at some high level.
Meaning Q or Mazian, which said no more than he knew.
But the reason for pulling them in? Plainly, they were Dekker's crew. We know things now about Hellburner we didn't know. We've adjusted the training tape to reflect that. We've chosen a crew with a top pilot to start with. What?
Oh, yeah, page transition.
We've adjusted the training tape to reflect that. We've chosen a crew with a top pilot to start with, a, tragically, clean slate. It's the best combination we can come up with.
Not to rush into schedule. Dekker's just out of hospital. Look at his psychological record, for God's sake. You're putting an outrageous load on this crew.
I leave that to the medics. They cleared him. He's in.
Cleared him with how much pressure from command?
What are you suggesting?
There's too damned much rush on this. That Dekker's not ready to go into schedule. Porey leaned back in the chair, frowning.
You expressed a curiosity about the tape system. Have you ever had deep tape, Jurgen?
No. Emphatically. It occurred to him at the moment that Porey could order that even in his case. And he didn't like the thought.
Ordinarily, DNI tape isn't so different from deep teach, less detailed in general. But the real difference is the class of drugs. Deep teach trank suppresses certain types of brain activity, eliminates the tendency to cross-reference with past experience. General knowledge is still an asset. Specific training isn't. Hostility to the process certainly isn't. The other trainees have both handicaps. They've been trained otherwise, and they won't trust a tape telling them differently. But this crew knows nothing else. They have general knowledge. They're not afraid of it, so their judgment can override the tape.
Theoretically. Another shrug.
So the technicians assure us that with no trained response to overcome, they can do it and not panic. We cut a new tape from what succeeds, and bootstrap the others.
You bring this tape business in, Graff said. You slip it on a novice crew without an explanation. Then you want to shove off belt minor reactions on shepherd crews that have risked their necks for a year training for these boards? What do I say to these people? What's the official word? Because the rumor's out, Edmund. They didn't take that long to put 2 and 2 together. Porey looked at him long and coldly from the other side of what had been his desk.
Tanzer's complaining. You're complaining. Everybody's bitching. Nobody in this facility wants to take this program to implementation. I have other orders, Jurgen. If crews die, they'll die in the Sims. We do not lose another ship on display. We haven't As happens, another ship we can lose.
We haven't another core crew we can lose either. Where are you going to get recruits if you kill our best with this damn tape? Draft them out of Earth's pool? Persuade the Luna Sol cargo runners to try what killed the shepherds?
Maybe you don't have enough confidence in your recruits.
I have every confidence in them. I also know they've never been cut free to do what they know. Not once. They're a separate culture from Earth, separate from Mars, separate even from the Belt. The UDC regulated them and played power games with their assignments and their schedules. The JLC changed the specs and cut back the design. These crews thought, when the fleet came in here, that somebody was finally on their side. So what do I tell them when they ask about this tape? That we took it off the last spectacular fatalities? That's going to give them a hell of a lot of confidence.
Dekker should trust it. The tape did come from his crew, and he certainly knows the crew we've given him.
The crew we've given him never worked ops together. They were financial partners. Everyone seems to have forgotten that.
Dekker's confident.
Confident hell. Dekker's numb. He's taken the chaff that's come down from the UDC. His crew's dead. Somebody tried to kill him. He's got a personal problem with a MarsCorp board member, which is why the UDC pulled him from that demo in the first place, on somebody's orders I still haven't heard accounted for. You put him into the next mission, and what guarantees you won't you put him into the next mission, and what guarantees you won't get the same communique Tanzer got? Pull Dekker, keep him out of the media, take him out of the crew that's trained for that run. And then what will you do? Fold like Tanzer did? Or tell the EC to go to hell?
Cold stare. Finally, Porey said, I'm aware of Dekker's problem.
Is that all? You're aware? Do you realize his mother and the Peace Party lawyers are all over the news right now? The case is active again. Do you think that's coincidence? Salazar doesn't care what she brings down.
I'm aware of Alice Salazar.
So are you going to pull Dekker, or are you using him as test fodder? Doesn't matter if he cracks up in the Sims, it solves a problem. Is that it?
You have a personal attachment to this boy. Is that your problem?
Yeah, because Graff has a scintilla of empathy. Woo! What a crazy concept. No reposition. Straight through. Straight through. He got a breath and tried to tell himself it was all right. It was only a sim. A last target. Miss. Sal said, "Damn," and "Sorry, Ben." Yeah, Ben said. "Dekker?" Sim Chief's voice. You didn't hear them break in like that. They didn't remind you they existed unless you were totally, utterly screwed. "Dekker, what's the trouble?" Pod was in neutral now. They wouldn't abort you cold. A shift like that messed with your head. But nothing further was going to happen in this sim. Virtual space was running, green lines floating in front of his eyes, but without threat. His heart was going like a hammer. Breaths came in gasps. Muscle spasm. He lied to the sim chief. Chief was going to order them in, no question. New crew. He could well glitch their reactions. He'd never gotten called down over comm. Never gotten a stand down like this. "Going to order a return. Your crew all right?" "Crew's fine." He didn't get any contradiction over comm. "You want to push the button?" Abort was quicker. Abort would auto them to dock. His nerves wanted that. "I'll go manual. No abort." Hell if he was going to come in like a panicked Neo. He got his breathing calmed. He lined them up, minute by excruciating minute. He brought it as far as basics. Meg, he said then, take it in. Dock it, straight push now. Can you do that? Got it, Meg said. Take a breath, Deck. 3 more minutes in. Dock was basic. Now. Lesson 1. Punch the button. Mind the closing V. They'd killed one man and a prototype module getting that to work real-time before Statentech admitted they had a problem. Whole damn program was built on funerals. Doing all right, Meg. He unclenched stiff fingers. Stiff fingers. Blech. Watched the numbers run, steady, easy decline in distance. Lock talked to lock, and the pod did its own adjustments. Bang into the grapples. System rest. A damned pod, not the ship, but he was having trouble breathing as the hatch opened, to Meg's shutdown. Shit! His heart jumped. Shit! His heart jumped. Easy, easy, he told her, as she made a frantic reach at the board. Lock's autoed. Not your fault, not your fault. It's automatic on this level. Not used to these damn luxuries. Breath hissed between her teeth. Got it. Thanks. No word out of Ben. Ben wasn't happy. Sal wasn't. He could feel it out of that corner. He thought about saying, don't mind it. But that wasn't the case. You damn well had to mind a screw-up like this, and they did. He thought about telling them some of those were his fault, but that wasn't what they needed to set into their reactions either. He just kept his mouth shut, got the tape, grabbed the handholds, and followed Meg out the hatch. Caught Meg's attention, quick, concerned look. He shied away from it, hooked onto the hand line, and heard Ben and Sal exit behind him. He logged the tape out on the console, teeth clenched against the bitter cold. Share, Meg said, gently, hovering at his shoulder, trying for a look at him or from him. Trying for a look at him or from him. He wasn't sure, and he wasn't coping with that right now. We'll get it, Sal said. Sorry, Dick. They were trying to apologize to him. Hell. He started to shiver. Maybe they could see it. Maybe they were realizing how incredibly badly he'd screwed that move, or would figure it once their nerves settled. He didn't know how much to tell them, didn't want to act like an ass, but he couldn't put his thoughts together. He just grabbed onto the hand line and headed off down the tube, not fast, but first, so he didn't have to see their faces. He heard Ben say, Damn temper of his. Break his neck, I'd like to. Hey, Meg said. Then, we screwed up, all right? We screwed him up. He's got a right. He wanted to tell Meg no, and he wanted to believe that was the answer, but he couldn't. He handed off at the lift, waited for them. Sal said, Dick, we'll get it. Trez bitch, that machine, but we'll get it, no problem. Yeah. First word he'd been able to get out. He punched the lift for exit level, snatched back a shaking hand toward his pocket. Meg was looking at him. They all were, and he didn't want to meet their eyes. He stared at the lift controls instead, watched the buttons light, listened to the quiet around him, just the lift thumping on the pressure seals.
So?
Tanzer asked, on the phone.
Does this mean a runaround, or does it mean you found an answer to my question?
There is an answer, Colonel. Negative. The orders come from outside this base. We cannot change policy.
Policy, is it? Policy?
Is that what we call it now, when nobody at this base can answer questions? What do you know, Lieutenant? Anything?
Graff censored what he knew and what he thought, and said quietly, I repeat, I've relayed your objections. They've been rejected. That's the answer I have to convey, Colonel. I'm sorry.
Damn you!
Tanzer said, and hung up. He hung up. He sat for a long few moments, with his hands folded in front of his lips, and tried to think reasonably. No, he could not call the captain. Fleetcom went through Porey now. No, he would not go running to his crew. And maybe that was pride, and maybe it was distrust of his own reasoning at the moment. He was not command track. He was not in charge of policy. He was not in authority over this base, not in authority over strategy, and not in the decision loop that included the captain, who somehow, in some degree, had to know what was going on here. At least so far as Demas and Saito had said. They'd warned Q, they'd pleaded with him, and Q had refused to rein Mazian back, had let Mazian make his promises and his assignments. So what was there to say? The captain had refused to disapprove Porey's command. The captain had refused Demas, refused Saito. Who was he to move Q to do anything? Perhaps the captain was more far-sighted, or more objective, or better informed, or more indifferent. Porey was aware of Dekker's problem, and Porey shoved Dekker and a novice crew toward mission prep? Bloody damned hell! You blew it, Porey said. Yes, sir, Dekker said on a breath. No excuses. No excuses. I told you I wouldn't hear excuses, and wouldn't hear sorry. You're the pilot. You had the say. If you weren't ready, you had no mortal business taking them in there. Yes, sir. Porey's hand came down on the desk. He jumped. Shit, I lost my place. I'm trying to bang a desk, damn it! Ah! Where were we? Oh, I'm gonna scooch some things out of the way. We've got a couple of these. Yay! Somebody's gonna come over here and be like, why are you breaking things? Porey's hand came down on the desk. He jumped. Nerves, Mr. Dekker. What are you going to do about it? Get my head straight, sir. Second blow of Porey's hand. You're a damned expensive failure, you know that? You didn't argue with Porey. The lieutenant had warned him. But too damned many people had told him that. I'm not a failure, sir. Was that a success? Was taking trainees into that sim and screwing them up a success? No, sir. Nothing's the matter with you physically. The meds found nothing wrong with you. It's in your head, Dekker. What did you claim after Wilhelmsen cracked up? That you knew better? Do you still know better? Yes, sir. Can you do the run he did? Yes, sir. You're no use to me, screwed up. You are no damned use, mister. I've got other crews. I've got other pilots. And let me tell you, if you don't straighten yourself out damned fast, we've got one more way to salvage you. We've got one more tape we can use, which I haven't, because you said you were better, because the techs said untrained personnel were better on tape. But if you're no other good to anyone, Dekker, then we might just as well put you right down in that lab and input what might improve your performance. You know what I'm talking about? He guessed. He managed to say, Yes, sir. I'll make a promise to you, Dekker. You've got 1 week. I'm not restricting you. You can do any damned thing you want. I don't give a damn for the regulations, for the schedule, for whatever you want to do. You've got carte blanche for 1 week. But if you don't pull those sim scores right back where you were before your accident, then we put you into lab, input Wilhelmsen's tape into your head, and see if it improves your performance. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Are you clear on that?
Yes, sir.
Then get the hell out of here and do it, Dekker, while the labs try to straighten out the damage you've done to your crew. I don't want to see your face right now. I don't know if I want to see it again.
And pressure. Dum, 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 dum. Dum, 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 dum. Pushing down on me.
Yeah, that'll probably get censored. I'm just so good.
Yes. We will do chapter 14. Okay. Sehr good. Actually, Under Pressure is one I'd really like to read aloud too. I like that book a lot. Wait, where's my copy? Under Pressure, where are you? No, seriously, where's my copy of Under Pressure? It should be right in visual line of sight from here. Oh, God. Surely it's with my other Herbert stuff. Dune Messiah. Second copy of Dune Messiah. I didn't know I had a second copy. Children of Dune, God Emperor, Heretics. Fancier edition of Heretics. Chapter House. Hellstrom's Hive. Green Brain. The Jesus Incident. Where's Under Pressure? Shit. I hope I didn't loan that to someone because that book is killer. If I loaned it to someone, I better get it back. Okay, moving right along. Having a minor panic attack, don't worry about it. Chapter 14. Sequence 258T-3. Dekker, Paul F. Authorized. He waited, clinging to the line, felt like a fool inputting the card and checking the tape serial number on the display for the second time, but the cold feeling in the pit of his stomach refused to go away, and nothing seemed right or sure enough. Couldn't remember if he'd done it. Things he'd done weren't registering. He was thinking on things other than here and now, and the number didn't damn matter. There wasn't a training tape he couldn't handle. Come apart on an orientation run, for God's sake? Their input couldn't have overridden his displays if he hadn't let it, and they were apologizing to him for screwing up? If he was glitching on their input, he could have spared a hand to shut them out. He could have let go the damned yoke and recovered it at leisure. The number one sim was a walk down the dock if you didn't seize up like a fool. Muscle spasm. 0.05 second bobble. Not wide enough to invoke the braces or trigger an abort on a sleeper run like that, and he'd spaced on it. In that 500th second, he'd been in the belt. He'd been back at Saul. He'd been with Pete and the guys and lost with Corey. God only where his head had been, but he hadn't known his next move. He'd blanked on it, without reason, without warning. Pod drifted up, opened for him. He grasped the handholds and slid into the dark inside. Respiration rate coming up. Sweat starting.
He could feel it on his face, feel it crawling under the flight suit as he prepped the boards. Belts, confirm. Power up, confirm. Single occupant, tape 23B, Dekker, P, all confirm. He adjusted the helmet. The dark and the glowing lights held a surreal familiarity. It was no time. It was every time. Some drugs came back on you, wasn't that the case? But the guys weren't with him now. If he screwed it by himself. Wasn't going to let them do to him what they'd done to Meg and Ben and Sal. Wasn't going to take that damned tape. No.
Dekker?
Sim Chief again.
Dekker, you want to stand down for an hour?
Didn't like their telemetry. Picking up his heartbeat. No, I'm all right.
Dekker.
Series of breaths. Porey's orders. Free ticket. I'm all right. Let it go. Seemed like forever, that light stayed red. They had guys over in hospital that couldn't walk straight, that never would fly again. Had guys in the mental ward. Sim Chief was probably checking with Porey's office. Calm the breathing down. Light went from red to green. Punch it in. Go! Deck, it was. How'd the run go? And, Deck, you all right? He winced, shrugged, said, Fine, working on it. And stopped the lift on 3 deck, made it as far as the nearest restroom, and threw up non-stop. From Meg, back in barracks, a shake at his shoulder.
Deck, share. Wake up. Mess call. You coming? You better come.
He hauled himself out of half-sleep and off the bunk, wobbled into the bathroom, and popped an antacid. The meds didn't restrict those, thank God, and to scrub normal color into his face. He walked out again to go with Meg, navigated ordinary space, trying not to see the glowing lines and dark, not to hear the mags or feel the destabilizing jolts of thrust. Familiar walls, posters, game tables, drift of guys out to the hall. Ben and Sal gave them a, come on, you're late, and he wondered suddenly where this hall was, or why he should stay in it, when there were so many other like places he could be. Spaced, he told himself. Sane people didn't ask themselves questions like that. Sane people didn't see the dark in the light. Hey, Deck, you all right? Mason. Yeah, thanks. Hand on his shoulder. Guys passed them in the hall. He all right? Sal asked. Yeah, he said. Somehow he kept walking as far as the mess hall, couldn't face the line. I'm just after coffee, all right? I'm not hungry. They objected. Meg said she was getting him a hamburger and fries, and the sumbitch meds and dietitians would log it to her. Bleh. And the sumbitch meds and dietitians would log it to her, the way they did every sneeze in this place, maybe screw up her medical records. He waved the offer off, went over to the coffee machine, and carded in. Nothing made sense to him. Everything was fractured. He was making mistakes. He'd glitched the target calls right and left this morning. It had been this morning. It had to have been this morning. But he'd run it so many times. He walked back toward the tables, stood out of the traffic and muttered answers to people who talked to him, not registering it, not caring. People came and went. He remembered the coffee in his hand and drank it. Eventually, Meg and Sal came out of the line, so did Ben, and gathered him up. Meg had the extra hamburger.
You're eating, she said. You want the meds coming after you?
He didn't. He took it, unwrapped it, and Ben hit him in the ribs. Pay attention, Deck boy. Huh? Huh? Ben echoed. Salt. Pass the salt. God, you are a case today. Thinking, he said. Ben gave him a look, a shrug in his direction. He's thinking. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Ben?
Meg said. Dekker, pass the damn salt.
Shit!
Wasn't approved calm. The soldier lads got upset, but she was upset. So what? It's all right, the examiner said. You're doing fine, Katie.
Tell me fine, I screwed my dock.
You couldn't flap the voice. It gets harder, Katie. That's the object. Let's not get overconfident, shall we?
Overconfident, Mike.
She was shaking like a leaf. Different voice. Deep as bone.
You shoved a screen in over your pilot's priority. Did your pilot authorize that?
Hell, she wasn't in a mood for games. She thought she knew that voice. It wasn't the examiner.
Katie?
Had to know, she muttered. Hell, she was right. She'd done the right thing.
Not regulation, Katie.
Screw the regs, she'd say. But she did know the voice. There weren't two like it.
Yes, sir,
She said meekly, to no face and no voice. Dark, that was all. Just the few yellow lights on the V-HUD and the boards, system stand down.
You think you can make a call like that, Katie?
Shit.
Yes, sir.
Silence then. A long silence. She waited to be told she was an ass and an incompetent. She flexed her hands, expecting God only. They sometimes started sim on you without warning. Then the examiner's quiet voice said, she wasn't even sure now it was alive, "Let's go on that again, Katie." She couldn't stand it.
Was I right?
Your judgment was correct, Katie.
Miss Dekker, do you have proof of your allegations?
Talk to my lawyer.
Is it true your son is in a top-secret fleet project?
I don't know where he is. He doesn't write, and I don't give a damn.
How do you feel about Miss Salazar's allegations?
More and more of it. A Paris news service ran a clip on Paul Dekker that went back into juvenile court records, and the other services pounced on it with enigmatic references to an outstanding warrant for his arrest and his work inside a top secret fleet installation. Graff punched the button to stop the tape, stared at the blank screen while Demas hovered. FSO had sent their answer. Regarding your 198-92, negative. FSO, whoa. Meaning they'd turned up nothing they cared to say on the case. At least, nothing they trusted to Fleetcom. Or him. Influence trading, Demas said. Scandals of the rich. Young lovers. Salazar and her money against the pieces. The public's fascinated. The fleet didn't need this. He didn't. Dekker certainly didn't. A bomb threat involving Salazar's plane, the piecers denying responsibility, the European Police Agency finding a confidential report in the hands of the news services. Rode the news reports outside Sol 2 almost as hot and heavy as the Amsterdam tunnel collapse. While Demas and Saito only said, "Hold on, Helm, hold on. Don't make a problem. The captain doesn't need a problem." "I honestly," Demas said, "don't think Dekker needs to see this particular broadcast, regardless of any promises." "She's never called him, never returned the call." "Lawyers may have advised against. I'd advise against. Personally, JG." "I knew you would." "So you didn't ask." "I don't know Earth. Now I wonder if I even know Dekker. He's never asked me either, whether there was word. Light and dark. The AI substituted its interlink for crew. He was fine till the randoms popped up, till he saw the wicket he had to make, and the pod reacted. Bobble and reposition. 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 Fucking hell! Screwed it. Screwed it. Screwed that one. Red light. You're hit. Keep going. Don't think about it. Chest hurt. Knees hurt. Right arm was numb. Damn hour and 5 sim, and he was falling apart. Made 5. Lost 1. Randoms again. 5 minutes down. God, a chaff round. Blinked sweat. Tasted it. Hate the damn randoms. Hate the bastards. Hate the company. Damn it. Overcorrection. Muscles were tired, starting to spasm. God, where was the end of this run? Couldn't hold it. HUD was out. The place was black, and blacker. Deck? Deck, wake up! From the other side of the door, and Ben, with the territory behind his eyes all full of red and gold and green lines and red and yellow dots, hoped Meg would just put a pillow over the sumbitch's face. Beside him, Sal moved faintly. Deck? Shit, Sal moaned, and elbowed him in a muzzy catch after balance. Deck, come out of it.
Son of a bitch,
Ben muttered, felt a knee drop into the cold air outside the covers and set a foot on the floor, hauled himself to his feet, and banged into the chair by the bed. Ben? Sal murmured, but the blow to the hip did it. He shoved the door open into the dark next door and snarled, Dekker! Dekker made a sound. Meg gave a sharp grunt above a crack of flesh and bone meeting. The son of a bitch had got her. Dekker! He shoved past a smooth female body to get a shove of his own in, got a grip and held it. Dekker, damn it, you want to take a cold walk? Same as he'd yelled at Dekker on the ship, when Dekker got crazy. He had one hand planted against a heaving, sweating chest, right about the throat, and Meg had cleared back, gotten to the light switch. He couldn't see anything but a blur, and he didn't let up the pressure. If Dekker moved to hit him, Dekker was going to be counting stars. He had his mind made up to that. Dekker was gasping for breath, eyes open now. Spokes again, Meg panted.
I'll say it, Spooks. This is the damn spook. I don't know why you sleep with him.
The inside door opened, and Sal came in at the periphery of his vision. He heard Meg saying, It's all right, it's just surface, and kept his own hold on the lunatic, who still looked spaced and shocky. Dekker's heart was going hard, felt like detonations under his hand. Dekker's eyes had lost their glaze, started tracking around him. Drifted back again, looked halfway cognizant. Let up, Dekker said. He thought about that. He thought about Meg saying for the last damn week Dekker was just confused, and Sal saying back off and give him some space, while Dekker kept a sim schedule the other crews were talking about. He gave Dekker a shove in the chest. Hard.
Let up, hell. I'll solve your problem. I'll break your neck for you. You hit Meg, you scuzz, you know that?
Dekker didn't say anything, so he asked for Dekker's benefit.
You all right, Meg?
Yeah. Hell of a bruise comin', Sal muttered. Dekker set his jaw again. Didn't exactly say go to hell, but that was the look he gave, along with the impression he might not be in control of his voice right now. When Dekker shut up, you either kept a grip on him or you got out of his way. So he kept his hand where it was, asked civilly, You still talking to him, Meg?
Wasn't his fault, Ben.
Mistake. Meg sounded Meg sounded shaky herself. Meg had evidently gotten clipped worse than he thought, and that wobbly tone upset Dekker. He saw that. Dekker quit looking like a fight, just stared at the ceiling, gone moist-eyed and lockjawed. Great. He gave Dekker another shove, risking explosion.
You want to maybe get a grip on it, Deck Boy? Or do you want to skit some more?
Dekker made a move for his wrist, not fast, just brushing him off. He let Dekker have his way, stood back and let Dekker sit up with his head down against his knees a moment to wipe the embarrassment off his face.
You know, he said, pressing that advantage, you do got a serious problem, Deck. You busted Meg, who's trying to help you. The meds are bitching you're pushing it too damn hard. You seriously got to get your head working, Deck Boy, and we got to have a talk. Meg, Sal, you want to leave him with me a minute?
Dekker looked away, at the wall. Sal shoved Meg out of the room, and Dekker didn't look happy with the arrangement, didn't look at him when the door shut, just sat in bed and stared elsewhere. Towel on a chair. Ben got it and wrapped it around himself. Wasn't freezing his ass off, wasn't matching physique with Pretty Boy either. Wouldn't effin' be here arguing with him, except he was supposed to go back into pod sims with a guy who couldn't figure out what time it was.
Just drop it, Dekker said. Drop it, huh? Drop it? Wake me up in the middle of, and I should drop it? We're getting back in that pod at 0900. I'm not seriously inclined to drop it.
Dekker leapt up off the bed and shoved him.
Just fuck off! Fuck off, Ben, all right? I'm resigning.
Took a second for that to make sense. Didn't look as if Dekker was going to shove him twice. Didn't look as if Dekker was anything but serious. Resign from the fleet? You couldn't. From the program? Moonbeam had cold feet of a sudden? Serious problem here. Damned serious problem. From a guy who had dragged him into this so deep he couldn't see out, whose neck he had every moral right to break already. Dekker was piling the reasons higher, except Dekker wasn't entirely copacetic enough for a fight at the moment, and there were two women in the other room, primarily Meg, but Sal too, who would take severe exception to his murdering the scuzz. Resigning, he echoed Dekker. Dekker leaned an elbow against the wall, wiped his shave-job mop out of his eyes, and muttered, "Before the sim. First thing I can get anybody on main day."
When did this notion take you?
Dekker's jaw locked again, visibly. Knot of muscle. Nowhere stare. But you waited, and it would unlock, sometimes in ways you didn't want, but he waited. Dekker took a second swipe at his hair, and stood with his hand on the back of his neck.
I haven't got it, Ben, that's all. I'm skitzing out.
Yeah? He wasn't eager to climb into that pod with a lunatic. He didn't know why in hell he had this urge to pull Dekker out of his funk and assure he was going to have to do that. It was instinct that kept him here, to hold the seams of the partnership together, maybe. What they had right now being better than the hellish situation they could have.
Skits I'm used to. You want to explain this new idea?
Doesn't need explaining. I can't cut it anymore. Can't do it.
Nice of you.
Yeah.
Dekker, you are the absolute nicest son of a bitch I ever met. God, what do we do to deserve how nice you are? We are stuck in this fool's outfit. They're feeding us this damn experimental tape on account of they got it off your crew and you scuzz out on us. Do you think they're gonna give up on the investment they got in us? No, they're gonna put us out on the line with some only skosh saner fool and take stats on how long we take to fireball. How long we take to make a fireball. Thanks ever so much for the big favor, Deck, and mercy for the vote of confidence, but you got to excuse us if we don't all break into party here.
I'm sorry. Dekker turned his back on him, leaned a second against the bathroom door, then went in and shut the door. Dekker didn't like that sudden cutoff. Didn't like that "I'm sorry" out of the son of the bitch. Blech. Didn't like that "I'm sorry" out of the son of a bitch. There weren't locks on the doors, not in this place. So he hauled the door open. Dekker was bent over the sink. Mirror Dekker looked up, white as death, with a haggard expression that scared hell out of him.
You contemplating anything stupid, Moonbeam?
What time is it, Ben? You know what time it is?
You know what time it is.
Not all the time, Ben. Not all the fucking time I don't know what time it is, all right? I'm losing it.
You never knew where it was in the You never knew where it was in the first place.
It's not funny, Ben. It's not damn funny. Let me the hell alone, all right?
Hell if.
He grabbed Dekker by the elbow and steered him out of the closet of a bathroom. Dekker balked in the doorway, and Ben slammed him hard against the doorframe.
Listen, Moonbeam, you don't need to know where the hell you are. That's Meg's department. You don't need to wonder what's coming. That's Sal's. You don't need to know a damn thing but where the targets are and get me a window. You hear me? Time doesn't mean shit to you. It doesn't ever have to mean shit. You just fucking do your job and leave ours to us. You hear me?
Door opened. It was the Marines, or it was Meg to Dekker's rescue. But Dekker wasn't fighting the hold he had. Dekker was backed against the bathroom doorframe with a kind of consternation on his face, as if he'd just heard something sane for once.
Ben, back off him.
Yeah, he's all yours. I got no designs on him.
He let Dekker go, and Dekker just stood there, while Sal grabbed his arm and said, Benji, cher, venez douce. That is, in fact, with a Z, so you are saying the Z. It is not French. It's pseudo-French. Hell of a mouse Meg had on her cheek. Meg was wearing a towel around the waist, and not a stitch else when she put her arms around Dekker's neck and said something in his ear. Come to bed, probably. But he wasn't sure that was what Dekker needed right now. Dekker needed somebody to bounce his head off the wall a couple more times, if it wouldn't wake the neighbors. Cher, come on. Sal tugged at him. He went back to their room, Sal trying to finesse him into bed. Ordinarily, nothing could have distracted him from that offer. But he was thinking in too tight a loop about Dekker, the sim upcoming, and the chance of a screw-up. He sat down on the edge of the bed. Sal massaged his back, then put her arms around his neck, rested against his shoulders. Meg'll handle him, Sal said.
Meg should take a good look at him. Sal, we got a problem. Major. He says he's quitting.
Quittin'?
You want to lay bets they'll let him? No. Yet. No way in hell. We've got ourselves one skits pilot. I got nightmares. He's got 'em. He's been pushing himself like a crazy man.
Put Meg in?
I think we better consider it. I think Meg better consider it. I think Meg better consider it. At least on the one tomorrow. I don't know if they'll stand for it, but that's our best current idea if we're going to get in there with them.
Sal gave an unaccustomed shiver.
They give us that damn tape. Hell, I'm used to thinking, Ben. I'm used to making up my own damn mind. I can't. I don't know that I am. It's a screw up. Soldiers no different than the corp rats. You get a feeling on a screw up. You're doing all right. The scores are all right, but I still never know, Ben. I don't get anything solid about what I'm doing. I don't ever get that feeling.
He didn't either. He hauled Sal around in front of him, held on to her, Sal being warm and the room not. Sal held on to him. He buried his face in Sal's braids and tangled his fingers in the metal clips. Dunno, Sal, I don't know. I've done everything I know. Meg should screw him silly if he wasn't so scuzzed. Won't cure everything, Cher. Makes a start, doesn't it? He's a partner, Sal said. Yeah, moonbeam that he is. Soldier boys aren't going to listen to him or us. Deck boys on total overload. I've seen this guy not at his best, and this is it. He's not stupid. Lots of tracks in that brain. That's his problem. All he has to do is follow one, and he's in deep space so far you need a line to bring him back. But none of them pay off. His crew's dead. He's still hurtin'. Not a damn word out of his mama. Porey's on his back. We're in deep shit. And he's not thinking. He's just pushing at the only track he's got. He's the only one that'll move. Don't give this boy time as a dimension. He's just fine. As long as it's now. Yeah, yeah, I copy that. What do they say? Hyperfocus and macrofocus? And damn it, you don't let this boy make executive decisions. Paper ranks got nothing to do with this. It's who can. Effin' same as the merchanders. Meg? He hesitated over that. Didn't have to think, though. Meg's Meg. Meg's the ops macro focus. The aptitudes pegged her exactly right. Meg always knows where she is. Knows 2 jumps ahead. Deck's the here and now. Not sure of what's coming. No, I'm the exec. Silence a moment. Maybe he'd made Sal mad, but it was the truth. How do we tell them? Sal asked. Sal, you want to switch seats tomorrow morning? She sat back and looked him in the face, shocked. God, you're serious. They'd throw us in the brig. Is that new? No, listen, we can do it. Same boards, different buttons. You got 8 different pieces of ordnance. That's the biggest piece of information to track on. I could diagram it for you. Inputs, you got 2. One from Meg if you got the time to sightsee, one from Longscan, which you know what that looks like. Ben, what are you up to? Surviving this damn thing. A long, shaky breath. Going against military regs wasn't at all like scamming the company. But it did start coming together, now that he was thinking about the pieces. Because I want that damned comp. Because, screw 'em, it's what I do. Because I think that E.T. sumbitch in there effing knows we're in the wrong spots, and it doesn't feel right to him, and it's killing him. I don't know this crew that died, but I can bet you one of them was the number 1 in this unit, no matter who they had listed. That guy died, and they bring us in and put Dekker in charge? No way. What's that make me, Mr. Know-it-all? Why in hell did they aptitude me Longscan and you the guns? He'd spent a lot of time thinking on that. He reached up and laced his fingers with Sal's. Because you want 'em too much. Because you enjoy blowing things up. Because that's not what the tests want on that board. She let go. Where'd you get that shit? Hey, Helldeck Psych, credit kilo. And I know what the profiles are. I'm from TI. TI writes these tests. They got this command profiles manual. Lays out exactly what qualifications they want in fire positions and everything else. Enjoying it'd scare them shitless. We're not inner system. You got to lie to the tests, Sal. You got to psych what they want us to be, and you got to be that on those tests. Only way you get along. Meg is doing all right with this stuff. Tape doesn't bother her. Meg's an inner systemer, isn't she? She knows how to tell them exactly what they want to hear. Meg's doing what she wants. We're not. So what do we do? Is Aptitudes going to listen when they made the rules? When they made the rules? There we go. Lieutenant might, if Graff could do anything, if it wasn't too late. He was scared even thinking about what occurred to him. But running into a rock was scarier than that. And that was likely. A lot of scary things were likely. like a crack up tomorrow morning. Stiff neck for a week after Dekker's twitch at the controls. Should we go talk to him? No, not direct. He eased Sal off his lap, went and got a bent wire out of a crack in the desk drawer. What? Sal started to ask, and shut up fast. She watched in silence as he bent down and fished his spare card out of a joint in the paneling. He put it in the reader, typed an access, typed a message, and said, "'Scuse, Sal, taking a walk." Sal didn't say a thing. He opened the door, went out through Dekker's and Meg's blanketed, dark privacy, towel and all. "Ben?" Dekker asked. "It's all right," he said. "Forgot something." He slipped out into the corridor, around to the main room of the barracks, and around to the phones. Linked in. Accessed the station's EI-DAT on system level. With a card with a very illegal bit of nail polish on its edge. "What in hell?" Dekker asked when he came through again.
Hey, Meg said. Easy.
He got through the door, and Sal didn't ask a single question, not while he folded up, not while he put the card away in its hiding spot behind the panel joint. You grew up in Aztecs territory, you learned about bugs, and you developed a fairly sure sense when you might be a target for special monitoring. He didn't honestly think so, but he took precautions and hoped to hell the bugs, if they existed, weren't optics. Most of all, he hoped the lieutenant was one of the good guys, because the lieutenant was no fool. The lieutenant knew enough to figure who around here could get into the system and drop an unsigned message in his file. They didn't have TI techs above a 7A in this place. He'd checked that already. And with that, I'm going to have to call it.
Right before chapter 15. How nice is that?
So yeah, Ben finally got his head into the game, and things are picking up. Ben has twigged to the fact that, yeah, no, these are not ideal positions for us in our team. They have assigned us to the wrong ones. We can be much more effective if we are elsewhere. Alrighty. Okie dokie. So yeah, to anyone tuning in for the first time, hi. Second, I do this every Friday. Starting at about noon Eastern Standard Time. Free Read Fridays, where I read short stories and indeed entire novels aloud. To everybody who's tuning in again, hi again. I also have these all up on my YouTube channel, which is where most people are probably hearing this. After this, should be getting everything up until now organized and set and straightened into their proper playlists, so it isn't a complete chaotic mess. So it's much easier to watch in a chain, listen to in a chain, whatever. I also do other streams throughout the week. I've got a Mecha Monday stream where I do something giant robot related or mecha adjacent. I'm currently doing a run through of the Platinum game Transformers Devastation, which is pretty good. They're giant robots, right? Technically, silicon life forms or something. Machine life forms, whatever. And I have a Warframe Wednesday stream that I do on Wednesdays. At the end of the month, actually, what date? What date is it? Yeah, end of the month. Well, actually, 2 weeks from now. 3 weeks from now? 3 weeks from now. After the 22nd. I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks. But I'll be back. I do plan on getting this book banged out by then. That is the plan. After that, if I have like a week spare, I guess I'll do some short stories. I'm not totally certain what I want to do next for a book. Now that I have conceived of the thought of doing Under Pressure. I really, 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 really want to do Under Pressure because I love that book. I think it's a lot of fun. It's one of my favorites by Frank Herbert. Not my favorite. That's probably, it's either the OG Dune or Dune Messiah. I love Children of Dune and I love God Emperor of Dune. Those are both fantastic, but um, I kind of like the couplet that Dune and Dune Messiah are, where Dune is like setting up the mythos, and then Dune Messiah, and I guess Children right afterwards, is kind of just deconstructing the Muad'Dib mythos and then like building something entirely more epic on top of it. It's really brilliant. It's really brilliant. And then God Emperor being the fallout of all that, the culmination of all that, and then Chapter Heretics and Chapter House being the fallout of that. It's really rather brilliant. The less I say on the Brian Herbert Dune, okay, Kevin J. Anderson with permission of Brian Herbert Dune novels. The less said on those, the better. They're pulp. They're pulp. Because that's what Kevin J. Anderson does. No bashing Kevin J. Anderson. He's done some great stuff in terms of Star Wars novels. He's done good fun on that in the expanded Star Wars universe. I have had a lot of fun reading his stuff, but that's kind of what he is. He's basically a glorified fan fiction author. And that's not an insult. He's still capable, but he's not Frank Herbert. It's impossible to be Frank Herbert. It just, you can't. It's like there's the one, the only, and that's it. You can't. He doesn't. You can't emulate that. You can't follow that act. So I don't blame him for not being as good as Frank Herbert. I kind of blame Brian Herbert for letting him write so many damn books, though. Time to calm down there, friend. Alrighty. Um, Before I scooch, one last little shout out to. Oh my gosh, I've forgotten his name already. Oh dear. I have it written here. AntiquarianBorg, I believe, is the one who posted. Yes, AntiquarianBorg is the one who posted photos of his copy of Hellburner. They're a bit cleaner than my copy of the book, so so I went with those instead of my own copy. They're nicely framed. So thank you to AntiquarianBorg for posting those images, so I could go onto the internet and flagrantly steal them and post them here as my background image. So thank you. Alrighty, with that, I gotta run. Hope people have had a nice time. Hope people enjoyed. We are very much in the climax territory of the book. 2 more installments, basically. Should be 2 more installments, unless I have to do a super, super short day one of them. But we'll find out. Alrighty, thanks again for tuning in. Stay safe, stay sane. If you're in a chilly place, be toasty. If you're in a toasty place, be cool and be decent to each other. See you next time, and thanks again. Bye.